Hey guys, welcome back to Clear Decisions, and thanks for tuning in. So in this video, I want to go over the Bitcoin chart, Ethereum chart, also Bitcoin versus ETH chart, and then the Bitcoin dominance chart as well, and then also BMNR as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I want to take a look at Bitcoin here. It's just recently had these two lines crossed right here, the red and the white one, on the daily chart, and I'm going to show you what's happened in the past when these two lines have crossed. So let's go and take a look at that. So looking back in the past, the last time it crossed was Wednesday, the 14th of September, 2022. And as you can see, that marked like the middle of the bottom part of the bear market, and they just crossed. And the last bear market, it did go a little bit lower after they crossed. However, though, it was basically in the middle between this low and also the final low. And then the time before that, we could see in this bear market, there wasn't an extra low after they crossed. It just started to grind up and then start to go a lot higher after that. And those crossed in this bear market Wednesday, the 27th, February 2019, and it was after the low was in, after the prices went down to this bottom moving average. Now looking at this bear market, we can see that the lines crossed, and then shortly afterwards there was a little bit of a dump, and which was a double bottom with the first low. And I kind of think that the cycle that we're in resembles this one as well. And I'm going to show you why. Like right now, we can see that the lines crossed right here, and the price went sideways, and then it went above this, gray line right here. After that, it shot up to the red line. Now let's go to what is going on right now. Now, as you can see, for me, this is pretty obvious. This cycle is a little bit different because so far, the price has not gone down to these bottom moving averages yet, but the lines have crossed, where in the past, every single time, the price has already gone down to these moving averages before the lines cross. So that is very different. Now, the reason why I think it's possibly closer to the last, like the first bear market that I showed you, is because these gray lines right here where they cross and the price is just getting above this gray line, and then eventually it moved up to actually test this red line as it was moving down lower. I don't know if that's going to happen this time. We might get resistance at this moving average. A lot of people are calling resistance at 70,000, and I could see a scenario where everybody thinks it's going to stop at 70,000, but then it goes a little bit higher and people get really, really, really bullish, and then it gets rejected by this red line maybe when it meets up with this next high, which is at like 82, but people will be super bullish if that does happen. But for me, it kind of makes sense because when the price drops down right here, it almost makes a double bottom, and then when it came down this far down below, it did actually go all the way up to 82,000, which lines up to this low right here, which was major resistance. So possibly it could be in this little bit of a range right here where it goes up, gets rejected as this moving average comes down, and where it meets up with this last high. I don't know. That's my best guess. This is just speculation. But if that did happen, that would be the end of July, around like August 4th, that time frame where it could hit this moving average. And I'm just going to go back to the bear market so you could take a look at that again. Yeah, so this is the bear market where I find it kind of interesting, where there is some similarities where it could possibly play out. And this is the bear market of 2015. And so you can see that there's a first little pump up like we have. It came back down. If you take out this wick, it would be kind of like a back to the same lows. But you can see the price went above this gray line, and then it went all the way up to this line right here. And that's where it basically made a double top right here, and then it made a double bottom to match the other bottom. So I'm wondering if this is something that's going to play out similar. And the crazy thing is when it did top right here, that was July 13th, which right now I think is July 13th. Yes, today is July 13th. So it'd be very interesting, but I don't think it's going to top out today. I just feel like it's about the same, time period. And then the drop was in August 18th. So if we are, lagging behind where the top is actually the end of July, maybe like August 1st, maybe this would be September 1st. It's about a month-long correction. Now let's go ahead and take a look at ETH versus BTC. So here is ETH versus BTC. And what I do find very interesting is these lines right here crossed. This is the same indicator used on all these different charts, but they're very powerful and I like to use them. But yeah, these lines just crossed. And if we look at the last time that happened, yeah, so those lines just crossed. So let's look at what happened the last time that happened. Yeah, so zooming out right here, we can see these lines crossed right here for, this is the Ethereum versus Bitcoin valuation. And after that, that is when Ethereum started to outperform Bitcoin and outperformed it by about 200%. And that was after it bottomed. So since those lines just crossed, it does suggest if the future rhymes to the past, and it's similar, it suggests that Ethereum has bottomed out compared to Bitcoin, and it's looking to outperform Bitcoin in the next 6 months to a year. And this is outperformance of, it was about 190 days and it went up almost 200%. So looking over to where we're at right now, they just crossed. So that suggests that this is the low. And now it's testing this bottom, this little moving average right here. It's testing that. So it looks like it's about to break out. I mean, it could go down a little bit lower. Nothing's guaranteed. It is a little different setup because right here they crossed and it already broke out from this moving average. I mean, I guess you could kind of look at it as like this right here is similar because you have a downward trend line. It's getting rejected by that moving average, but then it broke out after the cross. So we're kind of like right in this area, in my opinion. And then after that, the valuation topped out about 133 days. You know how this works, it needs to be monitored. Some things that could happen is it could cross back down, but however though, that's not what happened in the past. So let's go move on to Bitcoin dominance. And this is actually what really excites me because I already told you about these lines crossed a while back, and this is that's marked where Bitcoin dominance has dramatically fell and gone down a lot lower, which suggests altcoins will start to outperform Bitcoin. And looking at Ethereum versus Bitcoin, you can see like Ethereum is going to start to outperform Bitcoin, which is very, very exciting because we've been all waiting for altcoin season forever, and a lot of us feel like it's never going to come, which is myself. However, though, from these lines crossing, it does look like it possibly could. So let's look at the last time those lines did cross. So that's where it crossed right there, but you can see right here the red and white line crossed, and you can see after that the Bitcoin dominance did fall quite a ways, and that was the start of the altcoin season. So right now the price is below this area, just like it is right here before it fell off a cliff. And we could look at even another time when those lines crossed, they crossed up there, took a little bit while, and then it fell down, and that was a huge altcoin season. And this one lasted a lot longer, about a little over a year actually, about 500 days, 38 days. And then this one was a little bit shorter, 120 days, where for a long time for the altcoin season. So I'm very excited because, I've been waiting for this altcoin season. This full disclosure, I'm actually invested in BMNR right now because I feel like it's a levered Ethereum play. But Ethereum has a big ecosystem, so I imagine different coins that are tied to Ethereum are going to do very well. But again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just my own speculation. Now let's look at the ETH chart now. Yeah, so Ethereum is getting some resistance from this upper moving average right here. It's getting some resistance right here. I don't know. It could start to move up, but one thing that's interesting right here is these lines right here, the red lines on top of the white line, which shows that it's bullish for Ethereum. We can see the last time when these lines did cross, it was the start of the bull market for Ethereum, which last bull market wasn't that exciting. I could attest to that. But yeah, that's where they crossed last time. And they've been going back and forth because Ethereum is in a huge consolidation. It's been consolidating for a long time. And the crazy thing is, if we take a step back, and I'm not saying that Ethereum is going to go this high or not. However, though, if you look at this chart and you connect this bottom to that bottom right there, and you drag it to the top, and then you extend out, it says it's going to about $400,000, which I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think a more realistic target would be around 20,000 ish, but it's fun to dream, I guess. But it could break this trend line. It could go down a little bit lower, but just from looking at where Bitcoin is at, it shows that we could possibly get a bottom because those lines did cross, and in the past one bottom was in, and then possibly could have been make like a lower bottom. But what makes me kind of not feel 100% sure about this is that nothing's 100%, but it hasn't went down to these lower moving averages yet. However, though, I do have a way to explain why maybe it won't do that, looking at the Bitcoin dominance chart. Because if we look at this Bitcoin dominance chart, the last whole cycle was a whole Bitcoin cycle. And the reason why I say that is because these lines are just now crossing. These lines are just now crossing right here. So that whole last cycle was 100% Bitcoin. And so maybe we're just continuing the cycle where the altcoin cycle starting now because before it was a 4-year cycle, and when it was going up, it was starting with Bitcoin, and then at the end, altcoins pumped after Bitcoin topped out. But the whole last cycle was 100% Bitcoin, and now the altcoin season starts. So maybe it's this one big cycle where last cycle is combined with this other cycle that's more going to be towards altcoins. And so maybe there isn't a full reset where Bitcoin goes down to these bottom moving averages, because maybe this is just a mid-cycle correction in a bigger cycle. That's one theory. But at the same time, maybe, it does go down to these moving averages eventually in October. A lot of people are calling it for October. And possibly maybe the stock market goes into a recession, and then the bear market's even longer, where it goes down in 2027 when the stock market actually goes into a recession. However, though, what if when the stock market goes into a recession, maybe the money just goes into crypto because it's been beat up this much? So maybe, because right now the crypto market isn't correlated with stocks at all. Stocks been going up, the AI stocks, and it's been taking money out of crypto. So maybe if those start to not go up so much, and they just go sideways where they don't really crash, but they just don't go up as much, so then maybe people will put their money back into crypto as the AI boom kind of tops out, but not necessarily crashes, but just tops out, and then that can be really bullish for crypto. Another thing thinking about with Ethereum is that with Ethereum, One thing I could see Ethereum be really bullish. The thing is right now, China could come out with technology that makes AI a lot less expensive. So that would ruin the profit margins and the whole narrative for the justification for pouring all this money into AI if China comes out with something cheap. However, though, that wouldn't affect Ethereum the same way as other companies that are building these data centers, because it would actually be better for Ethereum if Ethereum is used by AI agents, because then it'll just make it easier for companies to have more AI agents if it's actually cheaper. But it would be bad for the companies where the valuations got out of control because it was so expensive. Well, because there's so much demand for different AI, like memory chips and infrastructure for AI. But with China, if China comes out with something that's cheap, that could completely ruin that AI market, where things would be completely overvalued if the profits get undercut. But it's like I said, it's not. But maybe it doesn't affect Ethereum in the same way, where Ethereum is supposed to go up because it's being used by AI agents. Hopefully that makes sense. But those are some scenarios I'm looking at where possibly, crypto might not be affected by a recession in the stock market. Another thing you got to think about too is companies are companies. I think they're affected more by the economy, where they could go out of business. Where a lot of cryptos can't really go out of business; they just keep on running. Because there's no CEO, there's no real business. It's more like gold in that way. So I'm invested in BMNR. Full disclosure, I feel like it's a Ethereum but leverage. I got a lot of lines up here. BMNR is very interesting to me because it has a lower market cap than Ethereum. I think Ethereum is going to do very well, and the MNAV for BMNR is like at 88%, which means it's like on a discount of. It's probably actually like 80%. It's pretty low. You can see the price is at $14.44, where Ethereum is almost at $18. So you can do the math on that. That's about, I guess, like 80% of Ethereum, whatever it's called. So anyways, you can see that there is a big gap right here. Now, I know that gaps get filled. I'm just wondering if this is ever going to fill to this gap. It's all the way down to like almost like $5 basically. So that would be very interesting if the price actually did go down that far. I don't know. If everything's bottomed out, I don't see it doing that. And I do think that, Bitcoin has a chance to get to 80 or 70,000, possibly 80,000. So with that said, I think we're going to get a pump up. If that happens, maybe BMNR could get up to maybe $19.44. If there's a crash after that, then I could see it going down, and with Bitcoin going down to these other moving averages. So I don't really know. But I do think the upside could be pretty good. The interesting thing right now, it's at $14.42. If you look at MSTR, the last bear market actually bottomed out at like 1340, which BMNR, the low is at about 1340, and MSTR went all the way up to $500. So what's it to say that can't happen for BMNR this cycle, where it's more of a Ethereum cycle? So my personal goal is for MSTR to get to around $500 a stock. So getting it here at $14 would be absolutely amazing. That would be, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I think it could possibly happen, where it bottomed out so far like 13.12, and wouldn't that be something if it went all the way up, just like MSTR, all the way up to like $580? That would be absolutely insane. And just for like a measure move, I don't know if it's going to happen. This is complete speculation, but you can see where I got the numbers from. I showed you about almost 4,000%. That would be absolutely insane. And I guarantee, and if this goes up this high, and if I had like an MNAV of like 1.5, I think Ethereum would be like I don't know, like if it would be probably like $30,000, about $30,000 or $40,000. Yep. So, anyways, big numbers, big dreams. Anyways, I just want to share my thoughts on this. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just my own opinion and speculation and thoughts on the market.